The pain didn't announce itself with a shout or a fight. It arrived quietly, perfectly packaged in an emerald green digital square. I was slouching on my couch, mindless scrolling as a Friday evening ritual. Then, there it was. A picture of my mother, Elara, and my stepsister, Tessa. They stood side by side in front of the magnificent, fussy stone fireplace I grew up staring at. They were wearing matching, absurdly cheerful emerald aprons, hands flour-dusted, looking like they shared a wonderful, intimate joke. The caption hit me like a physical blow. Starting the Thanksgiving prep early with my favorite hostess. So excited for Thursday. A gasp escaped my lips, but it was swallowed by the crushing silence of my own apartment. 6 days. 6 days until Thanksgiving. Mom always hosted. Always. And yet the call, the brief, efficient, traditional call where she dictated which side dish I was responsible for bringing, it was always the stuffing, had never come. I felt a dizzying wave of cold dread wash over me. This wasn't a mistake. Mom didn't forget things, especially not her children or her calendar. Forgetting me was a deliberate omission, a surgical strike. The exclusion was so precise, it felt like a betrayal of the 20 years I spent as her only child. My fingers trembled as I typed, trying to inject an air of casual humor I didn't feel. Did I miss the memo? Are we doing the stuffing or the green bean casserole this year? It felt like tossing a fragile bottle into a raging sea. I watched the screen, heart hammering against my ribs. 90 seconds felt like an eternity, an endless, agonizing loop of why? The reply finally popped up. A white block of ice-cold text. Maya, Tessa is handling the menu this year. We decided on a smaller, more intimate gathering. I'll call you after the holiday. I read it once, twice, a third time. My vision blurred. Smaller? More intimate. Tessa, who arrived on the scene when I was 10 and was forever the outsider to my history, was now the insider. I was the one relegated to the after the holiday pile. I wasn't crying yet, but the knot in my throat was so tight I could barely breathe. It felt like being erased. I curled up on the couch, pulling my knees to my chest, the cold dread solidifying into the first sharp pang of utter, incomprehensible sadness. I felt the hot sting of rejection deep in my bones. All day Saturday, my mind felt like a trapped bird beating against glass. I called Mom again, needing to hear her voice, needing her to tell me that the text was a mistake, a joke gone wrong. Nothing. Voicemail, always the voicemail. Her recorded voice cool and polite, twisting the knife further. Why won't you talk to me? I screamed internally. What did I do? By 3 p.m., I was a wreck of frantic energy and shame. I couldn't sit still. I grabbed an old, forgotten book, my plausible excuse, and drove to Hemlock Lane. I needed to see her face, to confront the why. I pulled up just short of the driveway, the familiar Victorian house looming large and suddenly menacing. And there was Tessa. She was struggling with a huge, clear plastic storage bin. My stomach dropped like a stone. The bin was labeled, in Tessa's careful, neat handwriting, legal documents. Tessa, the successful nurse, had no business with bins full of legal documents outside my mother's home. The sight was surreal. I slumped down in my seat, burying my face in my hands for a moment, trying to rationalize it. Tax papers? No, this was too solemn, too bulky for annual taxes. As I watched, Mom opened the door. She looked different. Frail, her shoulders were hunched, and her face was terribly pale, almost translucent. It was the face of a woman in profound pain, physical or emotional, I couldn't tell. She moved with a terrible slowness, her movements stiff as she helped Tessa wrestle the bin inside. I retreated, shaking uncontrollably. This wasn't about hurt feelings anymore. This was a crisis. Legal documents, Mom's fragility, and the sudden total exclusion of her biological daughter all smelled like a terrible hidden secret. Then a memory surfaced. A faint whisper from a past conversation 3 years ago when Mom was updating her will. She'd pulled me aside, her voice low. "If anything ever happens, Maya, look in the bottom of the antique silver tea caddy. There's a set of teas and a coded instruction sheet. Never touch it otherwise." The tea caddy. It sat on the highest shelf of the dining room cabinet, a pristine relic of my grandmother, beautiful and utterly useless. A rush of cold adrenaline hit me. I had to know. The suspicion that my exclusion was a shield, not a punishment, was almost more terrifying than the thought of Mom being angry. 90 seconds after remembering the hidden keys, I was driving home, formulating a desperate, terrible plan. I was going to break into my childhood home. I felt a surge of nervous energy that almost made me laugh, a dry, hollow sound that dissolved into a wave of sad determination. Sunday was torture. I felt like a criminal, my mind churning through logistical lies. I settled on the furnace excuse. An elegant, believable lie that leveraged Mom's innate anxiety about home maintenance. I called the repairman, feigned panic about a strange grinding sound, and waited. By 3 p.m., the handyman's truck was gone. I walked up to the house, heart hammering a frantic rhythm in my ears. I wore dark sunglasses, ridiculous for a late November day, but I needed the shield. Tessa opened the door, dressed in leggings and a paint-splattered shirt. She looked tired, harried. "Maya? What are you doing here?" Her suspicion was palpable, a low hum in the air. I forced a look of absolute, breathless relief, projecting a frantic energy I genuinely felt. "Oh, Tessa, thank God! Mom just texted me. She needs the spare key to the shed in the backyard. She wants to check the garden supplies before the freeze. She's in the bath, right? She said the key is by the sugar bowl." Tessa hesitated, her brow furrowed. "She's actually resting, but the shed key is on the hook by the back door. Come in quickly." I stepped into the foyer. The air was warm, rich with the smell of lemon polish, and a faint, bitter scent I couldn't place. I hated myself for the deception, but I pushed the guilt down. This was for Mom. As Tessa turned toward the kitchen, my body acted on instinct. I darted into the dining room. The antique cabinet was cold and imposing. My hands were shaking so violently I had to steady myself, but I reached up, scraping my nails on the dusty wood, until my fingers closed around the familiar, cool metal of the tea caddy. I carefully lowered it, quickly flipped it over, and palmed the tiny, ornate silver key from the bottom. Tessa came back, holding up the brass shed key. "Got it," she said, managing a tight smile. "Perfect. Tell her thanks," I said, forcing a cheerful smile. I paused at the door, trying one more probe. "And don't let her stress about Thursday. It's just the three of us, right? A quiet one." Tessa's smile vanished. Her eyes flickered away, a tiny, almost imperceptible betrayal. "Just us, and a few close friends. It's going to be a quiet one." I nodded, said goodbye, and walked to my car. The shed key dropped safely onto the passenger seat. But the prize, the tiny, beautiful, treacherous silver skeleton key, was digging into my palm. I had the key, but the lock remained a mystery. 90 seconds after starting the ignition, the cold sweat on my forehead turned to a feverish heat. I was now actively involved in a terrifying family secret. I had to know what door this key opened. I tore my apartment apart looking for the coded instruction sheet. It wasn't with the usual important papers. It wasn't until I picked up an old, framed photograph from my childhood, a slightly faded, happy picture of Mom, Dad, and me, that I found it. Taped to the back was a small, brittle note on the back of a lawyer's receipt. WTH 1856 V3. My hands flew to my mouth, muffling a choked sob of utter relief and fear. The code. WTH was the law firm. 1856, that was the year the house was built. V3, Volume 3, the library. I spent the morning cross-referencing books, finally settling on a rare edition of Poe, a gift from my stepfather to Mom, printed near that year. At 3 p.m., I was back on Hemlock Lane. I knew Tessa would be at work. The front door was impossible, but the back mudroom door with its old, often neglected deadbolt was not. I felt a surge of criminal excitement mixed with overwhelming shame as I used a credit card to slip the lock, the click of the tumbler sounding obscenely loud in the quiet afternoon. I darted into the library. The post set was waiting. I pulled out Volume 3. It was heavier. My heart was a frantic drum against my ribs. I found the faint carving, the tiny keyhole. The silver key slid in smoothly. A small mechanical snick echoed in the huge, silent room. The compartment opened. Inside, 3 artifacts of my mother's hidden life. A handwritten note, folded thrice. A small, almost empty prescription bottle, labeled Oxycontin. And a severe official-looking legal document, a deed of trust. The prescription bottle made me reel. A quiet, devastating shock. Pain medication. Chronic, severe pain. She wasn't avoiding me, she was suffering. I could feel the tears welling up, a blinding, hot pressure behind my eyes. I unfolded the note first. Mom's slanted, elegant handwriting. Maya, my darling girl, if you're reading this, I am so sorry. You were not meant to find this. I need you to understand that everything I have done is to protect you, not punish you. The house is your birthright, but the house is poisoned. Don't look for me on Thursday. Go to the coast, please. I love you more than words. The emotional impact was cataclysmic. I dropped to my knees, burying my face in the thick paper, sobbing uncontrollably. She loves me. She was trying to protect me. The relief was profound, but the sadness that accompanied it was immense. I cried for the weeks of pain she had hidden, the solitary fear she must have felt. Then I looked at the deed of trust, 6 weeks old. It named Tessa as the sole trustee and executor. The Hemlock Lane property was to be sold immediately on the Friday after Thanksgiving. The proceeds were to cover private debt settlement. The final crushing blow, a clause mandating Elara's period of supervised rest, hospitalization after the holiday, citing an undisclosed health crisis. The exclusion wasn't abandonment, it was the construction of a beautiful, painful lie to keep me safe from this reality. My mother was terminal, in crushing debt, and using Tessa to execute a clean, fast exit so I wouldn't be left holding the shattered pieces. The suspense of the why was over, replaced by the unbearable weight of the truth. 90 seconds after absorbing the reality of the document, a loud, jarring sound tore through the silence of the room. The doorbell. Someone was here.
Panic flooded my system. I shoved the evidence back, slammed the book shut, and bolted out the back door, securing the latch just as I heard a car door close outside. I was scrambling along the side of the house when I rounded the corner and nearly collided with Tessa. She was holding the leash of a small, yapping terrier. Her eyes were sharp, suspicious. "Maya, I thought you left the shed key yesterday." I couldn't lie this time, not fully. The emotional pressure cooker of the last hour had boiled away my ability to pretend. I dropped the cheerful mask. "The tea caddy," I said, my voice barely a whisper, thick with tears. "The deed of trust, the Oxycontin, the lies. I know everything, Tessa." Tessa froze, her own color draining away until her face was stark white. The small dog whimpered, sensing the storm between us. "What are you talking about?" she hissed, terrified, her eyes flicking toward the front of the house. I'm talking about the house, Tessa, the one she is selling to cover your father's debts, the one you are executing the sale on while she pretends everything is fine. I couldn't stop the angry, wounded accusation. Tessa's composure shattered. She stepped forward, her hand clamping onto my arm. Stop it, Maya. It's not gambling, it's medical. His illegal, experimental medical debt he incurred years ago, trying to buy Elara more time, before the illness got too advanced. He made a desperate, illegal deal. This deed of trust, it's the only way to protect her from absolute bankruptcy and prosecution. She is so much sicker than you know. They gave her until Christmas. Tessa tightened her grip. She asked me to do this, Maya. She knew you, her dreamer, would find a way to stop the sale, and in doing so, you would unravel everything: the shame, the debt, the disease. The Thanksgiving dinner is for the lawyers, the close friends who are handling the final documents. She needs me here as a soldier, an executor, to ensure the clean break. She wanted you far away, believing she was just being petty and cold so she wouldn't have to see you grieve for her and for the house simultaneously. I pulled my arm away, staggering backwards, physically unable to process the total scope of the tragedy. It wasn't a plot. It was a devastating, silent, lonely sacrifice. I had mistaken her shield for her hatred. I collapsed onto the grass, the sorrow consuming me. 90 seconds after hearing the full, agonizing truth, I realized my anger had been misdirected. My mother wasn't a villain. She was a collapsing star, burning up her entire world to provide me with one last ray of light. I cried, deep, wrenching sobs that shook my entire body, for the years of pain she endured alone, for the beautiful, terrible lie she constructed for love. I didn't listen to her note. I didn't go to the coast. On Thursday morning, I drove back to Hemlock Lane. I saw the solemn suits through the window, the executioners of my family's past. I rang the bell. Tessa opened it, her eyes red and swollen. Maya, please, you can't be here. The tea caddy, I repeated, my voice steady now, cleansed by the previous day's tears. The deed of trust, the Oxycontin, the lies. I know everything, Tessa. I walked past her into the dining room. Elara was seated at the head of the table, frail but regal in a pearl gray dress. She looked up, and the formal mask she wore dissolved into an expression of sheer, agonizing love and exhaustion. Maya, she whispered, her voice like tissue paper. I didn't look at the lawyers or the perfectly roasted turkey. I walked straight to her, knelt by her side, and took her hand, a skeletal, fragile thing. You should have just told me, I whispered, the pain in my chest immense. I thought you were punishing me. I thought I had failed you. You chose to be cruel just to protect me. Elara struggled, but her eyes, bright and clear, met mine. It was the only way, my beautiful girl. If I had told you, you would have stayed. You would have tried to save the house, and in that fight, you would have found the rest of it, the darkness. I needed you to mourn your mother whole, not your inheritance broken. A thin, fragile smile touched her lips. Tessa is strong. She is an executor. I needed a soldier for this final battle. You, my love, you are the dreamer. I wanted you to have one last perfect, ignorant holiday, one last memory of this house existing whole before the hammer fell. I held her hand against my cheek, feeling the papery thinness of her skin. I don't care about the house, Mom. I care about you. I needed to know why I wasn't invited. You were invited, my darling. You just weren't invited to the execution. You were invited to live. I spent the next 2 hours on the floor by her chair, speaking of silly, unimportant things. Not the house, not the cancer. While the lawyers finalized the sale and the house passed irrevocably into the hands of debt, I finally received my Thanksgiving invitation, an invitation to share her burden, her grief, and her terrible and profound love in the final moments of her life.